Hello, everyone, and guess what? I am back. That's right. Q's Views here with some new RPG videos, and we're going to keep them rolling with the new series called My Collection. So, this is basically going to be the first episode of this new series entitled My Collection. We're basically going to go through everything that's tabletop RPG game related in my collection. So, first, we're going to start with a bit of a surprise. Maybe not so much for you, but definitely one for me. And that is what you're seeing here is a player's rulebook for a game that I created called Crystal Ordred. Now, this game originated back in 1986 with some characters that I created while I was in 8th grade. And the following year, I met a good buddy of mine who we decided together to create a role playing game together. Now, the first thing we created together was our own homemade version of a Terminator role playing game. Now, obviously, we can't use those characters or those names because we'd have gotten into a lot of trouble. So, what we did was we made our own private Terminator role playing game. While on the side, we were also playing, of course, Dungeons and Dragons and various other Star Wars and other tabletop RPG games back in those days. And so we decided to come up with our very own, and we did. And he created a character named, of course, we were big into different bands and different types of music, and and I was always trying to come up with these abstract names for characters. And so I created a character named Scarlet Ordred, and he came up with a character named Crystal Reich, which ultimately came together to form the name Crystal Ordred. Now, this Crystal Ordred also has a meaning for the game. It's not just the name of our two characters combined, but it's also the name of something in the game. It's basically an alien language term, not crystal, but the Ordred word is, to describe something that takes place or part of the atmosphere in the game, which the game does go over. So I wanted to share with you the final, after about 36 years of playing this with friends and playing this with various people, many asking me, hey, you should turn this into a real thing. I always pretty much intended to keep this a private thing for me and my friends, but then I had so many people asking, you should make this a real thing, make this a real thing, make this a real thing. And so after 36 years of getting battered with that, I decided, why not? Now, there are a lot of people credited in this book, all that have attributed different artworks and different this or that, different aspects of it throughout the years. And they're all credited in the book. But it all started with me and Jack Otterstrom, who's also credited in the book. And this is what it's become. Now, in terms of putting this book together and everything that's in it, it's been pretty much a solo project with myself. But here we go. We have the first two books of what's going to start off as a 10-book series, and then we're going to go from there depending on, how well or poorly it does. Now, I'm not an expert at making these kinds of games, so even though I've been a DM since 1979, and I've been playing D&D games and stuff like Pathfinders and Vampire Masquerade and stuff like Boot Heel. And so I also played a lot of Robotech. Got into, like I mentioned earlier, the Star Wars role-playing game, the early iterations of it, not the newer versions of it. And so this is basically a culmination of all the mythologies, some archaic things, some high-tech and futuristic and sci-fi fantasy things, kind of all mixed together into one format. So at this time, you're probably saying, all right, shut up already and show us the book. So here we go. So this is the first book, which is now released to DrivethruRPG. A link will be in the description down below. Me and all my friends, we love this game. But of course, that's me and all my friends. It'd probably be better to get an unbiased opinion, although many of them claim that they are very unbiased. And so this is the player's rule book. I'm just going to go over it real briefly, but just going to go over a little bit. So we got our table of contents here. We've got our credits here. It's been many amazing people who've helped me throughout the years with different various artworks and playtesting. This game has probably had about, like I said, somewhere around, if you took all the time we put together over the last 36 years of playtesting, it's probably been playtested over the last, a total of probably around 20 years. So, but there's been some changes that have taken place over the years due to different feedbacks and all those different kinds of things with the friends and even family members and even some people who don't play these kind of games. But an introduction to the game is in here and all that kind of thing. All the various systems and planets. Now this game it does have elements that are medieval aspect based, but that depends on the planet you're on. Some of these planets are sci-fi fantasy, some of them are science fiction, and it's kind of a mixture of that with all kinds of real world mythologies and all those kind of things mixed together. But one thing I like about this game is not only do you have some classes are going to feel familiar, but you're going to have some classes that are very different. So we'll go over that in a moment. The ability scores are familiar, but also different than the usual game. I'll go over real quickly. The abilities in this game are acumen, agility, cunning, endurance, gunnery, intelligence, magnetism, and strength. So I decided to do a system that's not exactly the same as the previous tabletop RPGs most people are familiar with, but also to make it to where it's easy to catch on to. So it's not exactly the same system. There's some things very different, but at the same time, there'll be aspects of things, hopefully, as they have been to us over the years, that are still familiar and still, and not necessarily with the newer iterations of the game. Because when I played games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, I started with the very first version of the game back in the 70s, and I played first edition or AD&D. Some of us know second edition, third edition, 3.5, fourth, and even fifth edition now. And there's a lot of people, Pathfinders and various other games that have their various impact on the medieval-based gaming world and the iterations and those kinds of things that kind of span off from the main thing. So it's basically my own game system, but with bits of all of those kind of thrown in, my versions of those bits, I should say, kind of mixed in and stirred around like a big pot. So it's basically a stew of various things that we liked about games, the various games, and kind of left out the things we didn't care for, which means there could be things that I left out that you would like. There might be things in that you don't. But overall, I'm hoping that this will be a satisfying product for many people. So we have a cat-like race called the Akhenatis. We have a race that changes depending on their day and night cycles. They go through a metamorphosis known as the bipole. We have the Bolkion, which are huge muscular type species that basically muscle their way through everything. We have our cybernetoids. I couldn't use the word cybernetic, I guess, or cyborg. Something about it had copyright issues or something. I didn't want to chance it. We have the cyber sprites, basically like your elves. They're like kind of like a hybrid between a land and aquatic elf. The Hamachu, which we used to make fun of and call the ham and cheese. But basically, they're the species of our hammerhead people. Of course, humans in the game, if you want to play a human. I know some people think that humans are boring. They try to get away from them, but they're in here if you want to be a human. The ant-like people known as the Kumiak. The Macadians, or another elven-type race that live in an extremely high-tech world. The Meteorbians, which was one of the very first species that I invented based off myself. And of course, and a lot of these images, a lot of this artwork was originally hand drawn, and then of course some friends who volunteered their likenesses and those kinds of things was put into the game. So like this example right here, this image is actually an image of one of my brothers, and then this image right here, that's actually me. That's actually that's actually a character that was made of myself from a photo that was taken when I was in the 9th grade. So anyways, we have the Narelians, and that's what most of these are. Of course, with your alien races, I use various programs to make them look crazy. But Nomadians, Plateus Centaurs, and the Selachomorph, which are our shark people. So if you always wanted to play shark in a tabletop RPG, you can do it in this one. Of course, I made it to where there are rules and different things that you can do to incorporate what's in this game into other games and vice versa. We have the Terror Striker, which was Jack Otterstrom's idea, my co-creator of this game. Basically a species that's so horrid that they can, with the unsuccessful save, you could be placed into fear just by staring at one of these things. Okay, we have what's called the prosperity system. I'm not going to cover that, but basically there's many options that you can play this game in order for you to customize it to how you like to play these kinds of games. 2 main ways, but each of those main ways has many subsequent ways. There's an alternate quick start option for those who want to start playing right away and quickly make a character. There's your traditional rules, which is your basic setup, which can take you hours to make a character if you want to. You can do as quick as short as you want to, depending on how much you invest. And then you have all your various classes. But basically, there are many classes, many subclasses. Each class, if you choose to use it, which is optional, uses what's called a prosperity system. And under each class, you have basically subclasses or subversions of that class or alternate versions of that class that you can choose to specifically to have a more specified class within that main class, if that makes sense. So they're not necessarily subclasses, although they could be treated that way if you want to, where you have specific abilities that's only for that particular type. Let's say of the bounty hunter, you have the sharpshooter, the munitions master, and the fusion bounty hunter. Each of these are bounty hunters, but they have different aspects and different abilities and different things that only they can do. And then, of course, you have your abilities that are available to all bounty hunters, and of course, as well as your requisites and your class requirements and those kinds of things. But so I won't cover every option here. We have the covert operative, we have the crusader, which of course under that you have the guardian, the vindicator, and the paladin. We have something unique to my game, which is the Dark Templar, and there are 3 different orders of the Dark Templar: the Celestial, the Chromatic, and the Metallic, which is the Order of Dragons. We have the Order of Oblivion and the Order of Titans. These are meant to be classes that, when played very strategically, can be quite powerful. However, if you pick them and you just play them haphazardly, they're not necessarily going to work the greatest for you. So those are classes that are meant for players who are going to seriously take that aspect of the game and play it as seriously as they can. We have the Drawman, which is another class specific to this particular game. It is actually came from a buddy of mine named Chris Friend, who's also credited in the book. This was his idea, where we basically have properties of druids and shaman in the same class, basically a hybrid of the two. And so we have different versions of the Drawman. We have abilities that's for all Drawman, and everyone has a very, very brief description. We have the Dunce. This is a class that was specifically made about myself. Hopefully you'll have fun with that and not take it too seriously. Elementalists. And as we make more iterations of the game, more versions of these different things will be added to the game as we go. different vehicles, and of course our favorite, the beater car. This was actually a picture taken of a car that I actually owned, and it was so beat up and so rust bucketed out you could barely even tell what it was anymore. By the way, if you can tell what it is from that picture alone, let me know in the comments section. Here we have the living orbs. This is something unique also to this game. Rather than casting spells and those kinds of things, your abilities, a lot of your abilities based on class and those kinds of things, are derivatives of living orbs. And there's a full description of what living orbs are and how they work in the game. And that these are things that really pretty much anyone can use. Now, there are some classes that benefit more from using certain orbs than others, and there are some based off of ability scores to work a certain way. But other than that, most people can use pretty much any type of orb with a limited amount or degree of success. And so that way it's not just something that, so with spells, when you have growing up, with playing D&D and all these other games, clerics had cleric spells and wizards had wizard spells, and paladins used cleric spells and priest spells and whatever. But it's kind of open. We've kind of, through this system, we've kind of opened it up to where pretty much it's all interchangeable if you want to. And there's many different combinations, which has helped us over the years to have very unique characters. No one ever had, or even close to having, the exact same character. It never happened. Every character was always unique, and we always encountered something we didn't encounter before in terms of customization and combinations in terms of character creation, which always kept it new and fun. So this is where I've kind of incorporated the video game aspect, where in certain video games you're ranked, right? You have a certain rank. And I really like the Japanese system, what they've done in video games in terms of ranking games, where you basically start from F, D, and you go all the way up to A and even S being like the superior rank. So I've kind of incorporated that into this as well, to where rather than just having a profession and you can either do it or you can't, there's different degrees of what you can do and what you can't based off your rank. And so there are going to be some animal handlers that are more effective than others. There's going to be some in alchemy that's more effective with alchemy or can do more things with alchemy based on how much time they've put into using it in the game. And so this goes forth. This is all the same when it comes to professions. It's the same when it comes to skills. And it's always kept a lot of fun. It always kept things entertaining and always kept people growing. And that's one thing is, one thing I think, I've had characters where you got max level and they had everything and they were still fun to play. But I know for a lot of people, if you always have something to work on, you always have growth to do for your character in some way, shape, or form, that can be much more fun than having a character that's max level, max everything, and the DM or GM has to go through these amazing lengths to find you new challenges, or put you against some ridiculous things like the Tarask or weird things like that in order to give you a challenge. So there you go. How to survive the game, different maladies in the game, feats, and even some sample monsters and whatnot. And then this creature right here, let me know in the comments section, but this was a custom creature that I made. And if anyone down in the description can tell me how I made it, then I will comment back saying, yes, you got it, or no, you didn't. But I'll make a future video, or in a future video, I'll reveal how this creature came about, because it's pretty interesting, in my opinion. And all my friends too, they're like, wow, you came with that monster, how? And I tell them how. I'm like, oh, okay, that's crazy. There you go. So we have two different character sheets. We have, if you decide to want to play the full traditional game version, then we have a 3-page character sheet, which you can use as little or as much as you would like. And then we also have a separate character sheet for those who want to play a simple version of the game, or a quick start version of the game and only want one sheet to look at. So you have options in terms of how that goes as well. But the time to prepare is now. This is the ultimate companion guide to craft and nurture your character with several unique classes, races, and professions to choose from. You can cultivate a character that is truly your own. With this book, the possibilities for your character are endless. So dive on in and see the fun combinations that await you. In the Crystal Ordred, you'll find a lush double universe that combines the best of sci-fi, futuristic, mythological, primitive, modern, and medieval settings mixed together to create the ultimate adventuring experience. Be on the lookout for the Ordred Master's Codex of Intergalactic Wisdom, which breaks down the various planetary systems. And here's the book we'll be covering in the next video, the Ordred Master's Codex of Intergalactic Wisdom. This is part 1 of 4, which features Chimera, the system, the planet Chimera and its moons. There are 4 planets in the first system that we'll be covering. So this is book 1. I'm currently working on book 2. All right, well, thank you for watching. Thanks for taking the time. And I'll be back with you with some more videos of other game books and other game products that are in my collection. Remember, check this out on DrivethruRPG. The link is down below. Have a good one and stay safe.